Right, Ellie, we'll make a start. That's okay. I want to get you back in the sunshine.
Yeah, that's fine.
So it's lovely to see you, and thank you so much for giving up your time on this gorgeous sunny Friday. And thank you to all the students that are attending as well on this gorgeous sunny Friday of half term. I guess it might be giving you a bit of break from revising for next week's assessments. So Ellie is an old girl, and I wanted to ask Ellie a few questions about her route into medicine, and then I'm going to allow Ellie to tell you a bit more about what she's doing now and what her experiences have been during this crisis. So, Ellie, if we take it back to when you were in school, when did you make a decision about medicine?
So I first decided I wanted to do medicine probably in year 10, but I was stuck between medicine and dentistry. So I did work experience in both, and then that sort of clinched it for me that medicine was the one that I wanted to do.
Okay, and so that therefore informed your A-level choices, is that right?
Yep.
Yeah, and what did you take for A-level, Ellie?
I did maths, chemistry, biology, and Latin for AS, and then I dropped Latin for A2.
And were they easy choices for you? Were they your best subjects?
Well, Spanish was my best subject, I'd say, probably. But I was still good at sciences and things. But you need to think strategically when you're applying, because things like chemistry and biology are pretty much a must. So if you have a third choice that is not necessarily science, you can do that. But I just thought maths would be useful.
Okay, so you enter lower six and you start the Ucat cycle. What universities did you apply to and why?
Okay, so for those of you that don't know, I actually replied, I didn't meet my offer, and then took a gap year and then applied again. So the first time round, I picked Cardiff, Belfast, Liverpool, and Aberdeen, and I pretty much picked them on a whim. I don't think I did enough research at the time. I picked things that were city campuses where I thought I could just go out all the time and have loads of fun. And I ended up having 3 interviews, and then I got a reserve offer for Cardiff at the time. And then on results day, I got a B in my chemistry. So I was 1 mark off an A, and then I got it remarked and it didn't change. So then I took a year out, and then on reapplying, I really sat down and thought about it. And I applied to HIMS, which is where I've just graduated from, Cardiff again, Bristol, and King's in London.
And what made you apply to those universities at that point?
So I was obviously struggling a little bit because I was a reapplier. So some places wanted an A star in the chemistry, which I didn't feel was achievable for me. I was also looking at finance packages because I come from a low-income family, so that was quite important to me. And you need to look at where your strengths lie. So say like with HIMS, the year that I applied, a lot of weighting was put on GCSEs. I got 9 A stars at GCSE, so it was pretty much a guaranteed interview. King's, the Ucat, if you had like over 700, you were pretty much guaranteed an interview, and I got 730 that year. So I just sat down and thought where I was most likely to get in.
Yeah, that's really good advice, actually, looking at the detail of it, absolutely. So tell me a bit more about your experience of the Ucat then, because it's been renamed now, hasn't it?
Oh, okay. Well, the first year when I did it, I'd read that you could over-prepare for it, so I went the complete other way and did sort of no preparation, which is not the right thing to do. And I got 630, which is a perfectly average score. So what I would say to any students is be familiar with it and look at how the layout works and look at what sort of the segments of the exam are, but don't over-prepare and don't do every single exam, because it's not the type of exam that you can revise for, because it's just random questions on the day to test your skill set. So then the second time round, I got 730, so I think a little bit of preparation does you good.
Are there any good resources you'd recommend, Ellie, for some of our lower six that are starting to prepare for theirs?
I never sort of got the textbooks or anything. I just used the actual website because they provided a couple of past papers on there.
Okay, all right, so then you got your results, so you resat your chemistry, and you went the following year.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me about your experience of university and what the course was like.
Okay, so again, something to think about when students are applying. If you want to do a traditional based course or a PBL based course, so HIMS is PBL based, and that's problem based learning. So you'll get into a group every week, same group all year, and you'll talk through topics, come up with learning outcomes, go away and learn those, and it's supplemented with lectures, and then you come back and discuss it as a group. So that works really well for me. I'm not somebody who can just sit through lecture after lecture. But it was a struggle, the transition from merchants to university, because sometimes merchants is a bit like a bubble, and you're very lucky because you get all the resources that you need and everyone will give you the information. And then when you get to university, it's an independent learning process and no one will tell you what you can and can't learn. You get, rough learning outcomes, but medicine is really vast. You can't learn all of it. And no one sort of tells you how much detail to go into. So I feel like that was the struggle in first year, was knowing how much to learn. So my advice would be just really stick to what your lecture content is, because whatever's in the lectures is likely to be in the exams. And then once I sort of got the hang of that, it made it a lot easier.
And what were the other years like then on your course, Ellie? Was it very practical based?
Yeah, so in HIMSS, we do a half day a week in first year of clinical placement at the hospital. In second year, that goes up to a full day, and it alternates between GP and hospital. But it just really slowly eases you in. So you'll get an hour to speak to a patient, and it's just a chance for you to interact and get used to talking to them. But then by third year, HIMSS is fully clinical, and you get supplementary, sort of one lecture a week. But I find that very beneficial. Like at the time, the jump seemed massive and it seemed really daunting. But then once you start on the wards, you realise how lucky you are because you've already had 3 years of experience on the wards. And I know other junior doctors who've graduated and they've never even taken a blood or done a cannula before, whereas you've got quite a lot of that experience.
And so tell us a little bit about this year then. So you've been fast-tracked then, so you're already working, is that right?
Yeah, so I was one of the few medical schools to actually sit our finals because we sit them early in HIMSS in fifth year. So I sat my finals at the end of March, or the middle of March. So I sat my final exam on the Friday and the medical school shut on the Monday when lockdown was announced. And then we got graduated a couple of weeks later, and then we had to just wait for the formal processes and everything to go through. And then I started work on the 4th of May.
Okay, and where are you working at the moment then, Ellie?
So I'm working in Hull because I've been based in the Yorkshire region for the last 5 years. So I was based in Hull for the first 2 years. I've rotated around the region at all the different hospitals in Yorkshire, but Hull is the most familiar to me. So I chose to come here just as like a stepping stone. And then I'm starting my 2-year foundation post in Aintree Hospital in August. So I'll be coming sort of back home. But then for now, I'm just here until July.
Okay, and do you know what you might want to specialise in, or are you keeping it really open at this stage? What are your thoughts?
I think in all likelihood, I'll end up probably picking GP. They say that the majority of people that graduate from HIMSS do GP because we have a huge amount of exposure in general practice. Even from second year, we've been doing that. So I really enjoy it, but I don't want to sort of close off my mind too early. So I'm keeping it open and I'm just sort of working out what I'm not enjoying so much to cross off the list. But I've still got a couple of years before I have to decide.
And how will it feel moving back home from Hull?
I think it's going to feel really strange because, I mean, when you're at school, like, applying for university seems like the biggest thing in the world. And then once you actually get here, you start a whole new life in a whole different city and you spend your adulthood here. So I'm 24 now and I've been here since I was just turned 19. So it's going to be strange coming back because I feel like I've spent all my adult life here.
So what have been the best bits and the worst bits about your course?
I would say the best bits, it's all the clinical side of it. So it's getting all that exposure really early on. And it's HIMSS especially is very, very practical. So that's definitely the best element of it. And I would just say the worst part for me is because fourth year at this medical school counts for so much towards your foundation jobs. So I know in Sheffield, years 1 to 4 all have equal weights. So it's like 25% per year. And that all is calculated to make a score to go towards your foundation job. But here, like fourth year is the be all and end all, and we don't have a resit period for that. So if you fail anything, you have to resit the year and you lose out on your elective time as well. So that was just the worst part for me because it was very stressful.
Yeah, that's a huge amount of pressure, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got sort of a mix of some younger students, but I would say mostly lower six and some upper six actually who are holding offers and are waiting for results day. Mm-hmm. So what would your advice be to current lower six at this stage?
So, I mean, take all the practice that you can get, because I know when I was at Merchants, I had weekly meetings with about my personal statement, which was so useful. I had like a couple of mock interviews, and we did that MMI, multiple mini interviews. And I know a lot of medical schools have taken that approach now. And you got to sort of practice doing debates and things, which is what I think the medical school want to see you do. So I think that's really important. And I would say with the personal statements, don't just reel off a list of things that you can do, because if you want to do medicine, it's competitive. A lot of people have a lot of skills, and it's really important that you mention them, but it's more important that you reflect on what you've learned from that. So they don't want to see, oh, I can do drama and I can do sport. They want to see what skills you've learned from that.
That's really good advice to the lower six. And then for the upper six, obviously it's a bit of an odd time for them.
Yeah.
And they're having sort of a huge gap in their education as well. So is there any advice you would give to them, or anything that you would suggest they read? I know when I spoke to a couple of other medics, they recommended some flashcards that said were really, really helpful. Is there anything that you would recommend to the current upper six going into their courses?
Yeah, so I would say whatever sort of topics they're doing now, to keep on top of them, because you don't want to lose the skills. I've also got some flashcards. Let me just get them so I can see. Oh, and this book's very good as well. I've got a ton of all this stuff. This one is very good. This is called Mind Maps for Medical Students. And it starts off at quite a basic level, and it will just give you whatever the topic is, and it just puts it all out in a map for you in very basic text. So that's very useful.
Is that good for upper six then, and starting your course? Is that, yeah?
Yeah, this is what I used more in first and second year, because it's more about the science of things.
Okay.
This one would be a little bit more advanced. This isn't Oxford Clinical flashcards, but again, it's just very useful because it's got overview of like lots of different topics that you come across in medicine. Yeah. And then you can just read about the information on the cards, but you wouldn't have to do that much preparation to start. I would say more importantly is just to keep on top of whatever the topics are now, because you lose those skills quite quickly. Like I feel like with maths, I was so good at it, and then once I wasn't doing that much of it, I found it hard to get back into.
Absolutely. So I know that you prepared some things, or gave thought to some things that you would talk about. So can I hand over now to you to give some students some advice and your tips and the things that you've reflected on?
Yeah, absolutely. So just with regards to the work experience, some of you will have done work experience, some of you won't have done it yet and might be looking into it. I would say try and get it. And I know that at Merchants, or when I was there, we did the Wednesday afternoon community placement, and I worked in a hospice at the time, and then I worked at a care home near my house as well. No one will penalise you if you can't get the work experience, because it can be difficult. But you just need to make the point of reflecting on something in your life that you could apply. So if you've cared for someone in your life, or you've got an elderly relative, or you've witnessed someone else do that, then it's really important that you talk about that, because that's a key thing that they're wanting to see in the statements. And equally, talking about the care is great, but then you don't want them to read your application and think, well, why doesn't this person just do social care? You need to also hone in on the different aspects of why medicine specifically. So I know the key ones that everyone says, but it really does work, is with regards to the lifelong learning and the diversity of medicine. There are things that they really want to hear about and why that's of interest to you. Just like to circle back to your choices, being strategic is really important. Medicine is not like other normal courses where you can think, I want to live in Leeds and I'm just going to apply to Leeds. You need to really think about it. And I think that was my pitfall first time round, is you need to really, really plan out where you think you're going to get an interview for, because once you've got your interview, there's a good chance you'll get an offer, and Merchants will help you through the interview process as well. But I just think you need to really, really have a good think about those choices, and think about if you want to apply for a PBL-based medical school or a traditional one, because even though right now you might just think, oh, I'll take wherever will have me, you have to then do that course for 5 years. So just put a good thought into it. And in terms of interviews, I know everyone says it, but just be aware of big topics that are going on in the news. So you don't have to, read the health headlines every day. I don't do that. But I can tell you that at HIMSS this year, one of their interview panels was about the opt-in out organ donation, because that's been in the news a lot recently. And so if you hadn't read that, that's fine. But you need to be able to debate things and offer those skills. So just try and practice that. And then I just thought we could talk a bit about what life at medical school is like. So you've got the adjustment of going from this bubble at Merchants to this independent learning platform. And I would say it might be a bit difficult for the upper six that are starting this year, because I would say the socialising is key, and I'm not really sure how that's going to work out. But I would say you need to just try and get stuck in early. especially because it varies by medical school, but a lot of medics are quite cliquey, and they choose their houses early, and we have sort of separate societies and things. And so if you get stuck into that early, you'll find it so much easier as you progress through. And I would say maybe consider asking either at the interviews or the offer days about how the weighting works. For the end of the year, when I was saying about Sheffield, every year counts, but at my medical school, first and second year didn't count. You just had to pass. And I feel like that's important to know because, you know, if you're a first year, you might think like, oh, this isn't that important, but actually it counts for 25% of your score, then that matters. Because that total decile score, so you're ranked from 1 to 10, and everyone's given a score. And then you also sit an exam in 5th year, and all of that comes together to make a score for you to apply to foundation schools. And obviously, the better your score, the more likely you'll get the hospital that you want and then the jobs that you want. So it seems really far ahead, but it is something just to keep in the back of your mind. And also just consider asking them how much clinical exposure you get at that medical school. Because again, even though that seems so far ahead, it'll really, really matter once you get to 5th year and you're about to graduate and you've not had that much clinical exposure, because obviously that's what you're going to do for the rest of your life. And I thought maybe people might want to know about the electives. They're not something that you do until 4th or 5th year. And it's a chance for you just to work either in the hospital that you work in or in a different hospital. It can be anywhere in the world. They're about 4 to 8 weeks, depending on the medical school. And it's just a chance for you to go away and look at a topic that you're interested in. And if you're not interested, you can just do general stuff. I went and did infectious diseases in Malta because that was something that I was interested in. And I know people just do like general medicine, but that's sort of one of those once in a lifetime opportunities. And you're fortunate because hopefully 4 years time, COVID-19 won't be an issue and you'll be able to go on them, not like the current year that's been cancelled for. But yeah, so in terms of my life right now, it's been daunting because I was on GP for my last rotation. So I used to run a clinic in Grimsby by myself Monday to Friday, which was really great experience, really enjoyable. But then it means that I hadn't stepped foot in a hospital since last year. And then I came back onto the wards as a junior doctor. And on my first day, I just got a prescription handed to me. I was asked to prescribe antibiotics. And I was just like, oh, this is terrifying. But you're really well supported. And I feel like it's a good sort of stepping stone to start in August at Aintree. I feel like it's been a really good experience.
Really good advice. Can I ask a couple more questions?
Yeah, of course.
And then I'm going to hand over to the students. So did you ever consider a backup? You know, when you applied, did you ever have a 5th choice? Did you ever consider that, Ellie?
Yeah, so again, I just feel like reckless decisions were made when I was at school because I was very confident I'd get an offer. So I put my 5th choice as anatomy at Liverpool, which was not something that I was really interested in and I didn't really think about it. But I know that like most people put biomed, and I definitely didn't want to do that. And then when results day came, you know, Merchant said, why don't you take your backup offer? But the more I thought about it, the more I didn't want to commit to 3 years of my life with that. So the second time round, I really put thought into it, and I put my backup choice as pharmacology.
Okay.
Because that's a good career choice, and there's actually quite good high employment rates out of that. So I would say, don't just randomly pick biomed. If you want to do biomed, then that's absolutely fine. But don't just put it because that's what everyone else does. No, really think about it.
Yeah, I think that I'm really glad I asked you that question actually, because I think again that's really, really good advice. And the course you mentioned then is a course that I think often students overlook actually, so definitely worth looking in more detail. Okay, so I want to open up to the students that are in the chat. So does anybody have any questions for Ellie? There's a couple of people typing Ellie, so I'll ask you them if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Oh, I can see it. Did I intercalate? Okay.
Yeah, did you intercalate? Is it worth it?
So I didn't intercalate. I didn't have a topic in mind that I was super, super interested in. I've got friends that did intercalate. I would say it depends on what your post-medical school career goals are, because the point with intercalation, it's good for your CV. You get extra points on this application process towards foundation programs. So if you get first, you'll get an extra 4 points, which doesn't sound like a huge amount, but it's actually a huge amount because everyone's numbers are quite close together. So if you were wanting to work in, you know, for example, surgery or somewhere in London, then the point system becomes very valuable to you, and that will be quite important. But just something to consider is that you're doing a degree in 1 year. So you sort of lose your summer holiday, and it's not an easy time for you to go away and just have more of a normal uni life. Like my friend said, it was really, really hard because they were trying to get a first. And also with regards to student finance England only covers you for 4 years. So the 5th year of a normal medical course is actually funded by the NHS. They pay your tuition fees, and they also give you a little bit of a grant and a little bit of a loan. But if you've intercalated, then you've then got 2 years where you haven't got funding from student finance, but the NHS will not fund your then 4th year at medical school. So you need to consider that you'll have 2 years with very little funding.
Thanks, Ellie. Does anybody else have any other questions? How much preparation should a GCSE student be doing in terms of looking for work experience?
So, I mean, you want to have some work experience under your belt if you can get it by the time that you apply. So I would say it's definitely worth looking around because it's not necessarily as easy as people sometimes think. I mean, I was really fortunate that the care home near my house was accepting people, but I know other people who've had difficulties. So I would say the longer that you do it also shows commitment and determination. So if you apply now as a GCSE student and you do a solid year by the time that you're doing your personal statement, then that will actually look really good. But again, if you can't get it, then it's not the end of the world. But I would say certainly look into it at this point.
Yeah, I agree. And I think probably little and often is probably really good advice, because remember, it's very competitive. So you're looking at some really good GCSE grades and A-level grades, and you don't want to sort of dilute those grades with sort of taking too much on. It's great if you can get something in a hospital, but please don't overestimate how valuable that is. You know, some really good commitment in a care home or some volunteering or looking after young children is really valuable as well. Do you agree, Ellie?
Yes, definitely. And again, getting work experience is hard enough, but getting work experience in a hospital can be really, really difficult. So if you can get one in a care home or anything like that, that will absolutely be enough.
Another student asked, if the course is 6 years long, do the NHS still fund that 6th year, or would you have to get another job to help fund your course?
Do you mean as a medical course that's 6 years long, or with the intercalation? Because as far as I'm aware, student finance will only fund 4 years, and the NHS will fund 1 year. The NHS won't fund 2 years of a course. So even if the course is 6 years, I assume you'll still have the same issue, but I wouldn't sort of quote me on it. I would say go and check on student finance with that.
Any other questions? Someone's typing. Can you see that? So what are the hours you're working like at the moment then, Ellie?
So it's rotated. I'm on a surgical job at the minute. So it's very varied, but my shifts are long, but then I have more time off. So my standard day is 11 hours and my long days are 12.5 hours. So last week I did 4 12.5 hour shifts together, but then I have this week off because I've just done that. Because I'm on surgical, but then my housemates are on medical and their shifts tend to be like 8 till 4.
I can't see any more questions, so I think I'll probably try and wrap it up. And then if you hang on with me, then if any more do come through, then we can do our best to answer them. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, that's absolutely fine.
And if any students contact me and would like to contact you directly, are you happy for me to give them your details, Ellie?
Yeah, that's perfect.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much.
No problem.
So I'd like to thank Ellie for giving her time this afternoon on this gorgeous sunny Friday. Ellie and I will hang on for the next 5 or 10 minutes to answer any more questions. If you've had enough of us and all your questions have been answered, you're more than welcome to leave. And thank you very much for your time, Ellie.
No problem.
Saying thank you. Yeah.
Oh, it's very polite.
Here you go. How do you choose what type of doctor do you want to be?
Okay. You don't have to make any decisions at medical school or even with the foundation program. So for those of you that don't know, you do a 2-year foundation program straight out of medical school. and that's like when you're a junior doctor. And then after that, you can either choose medical training, surgical training, general practice, or if you're not sure, you can take what they call gap years, but you can still work as a doctor, but you're just, a non-specified general doctor. When you apply for jobs for your foundation program, they're called tracks, and they're 6 rotations. Each one is 4 months long. That spans over 2 years. So you'll rank the jobs based on things that you're interested in. So, for example, my foundation program, I've got gastrosurgery, endocrine and diabetes, psychiatry, general practice, A&E, and respiratory medicine. And again, this is why it's useful to have a clinical-based medical school, because you rotate around the wards so much in that 3-year period that you know what you are and aren't interested in. And you'll just pick that up just from learning about the medicine, from seeing procedures done, that sort of thing. You'll know what you do and don't want to do. But it's just the whole point of the foundation program is that it's a general overview. So you don't have to pick things that you think you definitely want to do. And then at the end of that, you can make your decision.
That's really good advice. I think any of the doctors that we've ever had on have said keep a really open mind, actually, because you don't really know till you're there what's going to interest you and what's really going to sort of light your fire.
Definitely. I would say that my opinions before medical school have changed so much, because until you've actually done the job, you just don't know what it's like.
And you don't need to know either, do you?
Yeah.
I think the biggest decision is choosing medicine, and then everything else will come after that.
And I just want to say as well, because everyone said this to me and I didn't believe them, applying and getting into medical school is the hardest part. Once you are in medical school, they do nothing but support you because they want you to pass, because we need doctors. And even though I was terrified in 4th year about like the prospect of failing, so few people actually failed, because at this point they've put 4 years of support and time into you. They want to pass you. And so it seems like such a huge deal because it is at this stage in your life. And then once you get in, it's not quite plain sailing, but it's a lot easier.
The application process is sort of all-consuming, isn't it? I agree. Can't see any more questions coming in. If you're unsure if you want to do it or not, should you do medicine?
I mean, that's a really tricky question because it's something that you really have to decide for yourself. But what I would say is it's your whole entire life. It's not really the type of degree, like say like if you did psychology, for example, and then you decided that you don't actually want a job in psychology, there's plenty of other things that you could do because you've got that degree. But with medicine, you sort of follow the process. You apply for jobs while you're still at university, and it's a set trajectory of a career path. So I would say for you, maybe do some more work experience. If you're unsure, but you're like hinging more towards a yes, then maybe just go for it. If you're really, really unsure, maybe I would suggest just taking a year out, getting a job as maybe a healthcare assistant or something hospital-based. Because, I mean, I took a year out and it seemed like a huge deal at the time. But actually it was a really good experience because I worked in Mersey Care and then I got more experience of healthcare and things. But maybe just don't rush into the decision.
Yeah, I think as well, from what I've heard, and you may agree or not with this, is that postgraduate medicine is growing in popularity and makes some absolutely superb doctors because you've had a bit longer to make that decision, you're a bit more mature in sort of your approach. And I think postgraduate medicine is also a great option for students who are a bit unsure. Obviously, that's slightly more expensive route. I say slightly more. It is an expensive route, but at least you'd know you're making an informed decision as well. So I think that could also be a good option if you were very, very unsure.
Yeah, definitely. And as you say, they're sort of more prepared for things. I've got a lot of graduates in my year group, and they always seem to know so much because they've come from some sort of scientific degree. And so they find the transition a lot easier. They find the content in the first couple of years easier. And the added bonus that you get more points on your foundation program because you've done another degree.
Yeah, absolutely. So I hope that helps, Molly. So thank you. Okay, I can't see anything else coming in, Ellie, so I'm probably going to wrap it up if that's okay with you.
Yeah, that's fine.
I really, really appreciate your time. It's so nice to have a young old girl on and talk about your experience and give your time so generously to us.